Hello, I'm Jorge Gestoso. Welcome to a new program. On today's show, immigration in the U.S., the separation of children from their parents on the southern border, also the future of the Dreamers, and the impact of the policy of zero tolerance in the coming midterm elections with Gustavo Torres, Executive Director of CASA, the largest organization in defense of immigrants in the east of the U.S. Gustavo Torres, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, Jorge. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Gustavo, from all this situation of the separation of the children from their parents in the southern border, what is the issue that concerns you the most?
Because that is a policy, Jorge, that is cruel, immoral, and totally unacceptable. Many sectors in the U.S. are telling this president and this administration, this is totally unacceptable. You are separating more than 2,500 people, parents, from the kids. It's totally unacceptable, and the judge ordered in June 27 that they need to reunite the parents and the kids. And I think that this administration still is not doing that. Still, we have almost 500 kids that are separated from those parents. So we are calling this administration to act, to very simple, they need to fulfill what the judge tells them to do. They need to reunify the parents and the kids.
Two deadlines already went by, precisely decided by a judge in California. The government didn't fulfill the commitment to reunite the children. At least, as you mentioned, more than 500 are still separated, and they're in limbo. The government has not given a plan, has not given a deadline when he's going, or the government is planning to put them together. What is going on? What to expect that is going to happen?
They don't have any plans. And what they say is that they are going to keep separating those families because some of the parents already have some criminal record that we don't know what kind of criminal record. Could be that they enter in this country undocumented, and for them that is a criminal record. So that is the reason why we want to know what happened with those kids. You imagine, Jorge, a kid that is in a cage, 5 years old, that is your kids. I'm very afraid what people are thinking about. That is horrendous. So we are calling this administration to stop this racist and cruel attack against our communities. Because absolutely, what they're trying to do is send a message to our families and to our kids and to our community. If you enter in this country, regardless that you enter legally or undocumented, you are not welcome here. It's kind of sending a message, and we believe that that is a racist and cruel message because people are coming to this country due to the political situation or the poverty in our countries. And we have the responsibility as a country to listen to them because it's very clear the United Nations and the international law just very clear say if somebody is requesting political asylum or refugee, we need to listen to them. This administration, what they're doing is that take the kid and separate it from the parents. That is totally unacceptable.
Even American television networks are calling some of those abuses children abuse that they are practicing the U.S. government. And in levels of cruelty, they could happen that some of the kids could be given in adoptions and the parents are not going to be able to see them for the rest of their life. Is that cruelty?
Oh, it's horrendous. Very clear. But not only that, Jorge. What you describe is horrendous. You imagine I am a parent and I decide because the political or the poverty situation in my country to live and to come here legally and just request refugee or political status. And what this administration does is separate me from my little one. Is totally unacceptable, cruel, and immoral. I believe that is, I never imagined that that is going to happen in this country. And it's exactly what is happening right now. But not only that, we also heard about cases where when those kids have been in detention, have been abused, sexual abuse, physical abuse. They provide to them some medicine without no authorization because what they say is that those people are very desperate, so they need to provide some medicine. It's just horrendous. And I believe that the American people are going to respond in a way that they cannot imagine in November election.
You were mentioning, for example, that in many cases, these immigrants are coming from mostly Central America.
That is correct.
Triangle, we're talking El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, and you were mentioning the situation there. But there is a large consensus among experts that in many cases, the situation, quote unquote situation, is being at least helped by the US policies. So much so, for example, that in the case of Honduras, there was an election clearly denounced that has been a fraud. The actual president has been reelected, and the US is supporting the result of that election that has been decided that was a fraud. And those policies practiced by this president that has been having the endorsement of the US is absolutely against the interests of the most of the people that has no other choice than, as you said, trying to avoid violence, killings, kidnappings, rapists that are coming to the US. And the US, in the US, when you live here, you don't listen that the US is at least partly responsible for what is going on, that the people are coming here. Why do you think that the US doesn't accept the responsibility in the crisis that is being generated?
Yeah, no, you described very well what happened. Honduras is a very clear example of, people want to have democracy, and they vote, and very massively they vote for the opposition, and it was a fraud, and the US was okay with that, right? And that is very specific example, but the same situation happened in El Salvador. We have another very sad situation. The gang members, the MS-13 that he mentioned every single day and accuse all of us that we are MS-13, all of us, including you and me. For him, anybody who is Latino is member of the gang. That is kind of the way how he's describing this and using that for the elections, right? Remember, the MS-13 was a gang who born right here in LA.
In Los Angeles, exactly.
In LA, you remember that one during the 80s and 90s, right? And now they deport those people, and look at what's the crisis that we are facing. And that is, and the same situation happened with the famous, war in drugs, right? What is going to happen with that? That many people, poor people in Latin America and in particular in Central America are suffering this crisis. So I think that part of the problem is that we don't want to recognize that we cause these kind of situations in Central America, in Latin America, because then we need to reevaluate our policies and we need to change our policies. Policies that not only this administration support, but the entire Congress support. And I want to include there not only Republicans, Democrats also support those kind of policies. Totally unacceptable. And now you see the results. That is the reason why we have 11 million people who are undocumented right over here in this country, because we also support, NAFTA and all of these free market policies that are then impacting very negatively in our countries.
Also, when you are living in the US, you hear that they are pointing the finger, corruption in Latin America.
Right.
The Latin Americans are all corrupted governments, all corrupted people. But let me ask you this. We know there are private detention centers in the US.
That is correct.
At least only 2 companies own 70% of those detention centers. Mm-hmm. In the last quarter, the presidency of Trump was approving the construction of about 5 more prisons, private, for about $2 billion. And they're going to be in the hands of those companies. Among the profits of one of them in 1 year, 130% profit. We are talking here that this business is incredibly profitable for the private industry, and those owners of the prisons are giving donations to the congressmen here in Washington for them to be in agreement of this policy. If you think they are keeping tens of thousands of undocumented immigrants in those prisons. Do you believe that a congressman in the US is going to push for an immigration reform that could give the path to citizenship if they're living from the donations of the detention centers that are putting the immigrants in jail?
No, Jorge, and it's very difficult. And let me tell you, we have been in the Capitol Hill for many, many years. And you know who are the worst opposition that we have? Those companies. Because they have people lobby in Capitol Hill against comprehensive immigration reform. They don't want it. And you describe very well why. Because it's a money maker when they arrest hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of immigrants. You know, because they pay for individual, for bed is the way how they describe. They have a quota, right? And they say, okay, if you fill this particular jail, we are going to pay you X amount of money. And that is the way how these people make millions and millions of dollars. We see them every single time that we are lobbying for comprehensive immigration reform in Capitol Hill doing the other way around, in opposition of immigration reform. So it's very clear. It's a clear corruption and a strategy to make sure that our community are undocumented because they benefit from that. And that is part of the challenge that we face when we privatize, you know, the jails to arrest our communities. That is a clear way to make money. And it's not only with Latinos. And that is the reason why we partner and work very close with the African American community, because they arrest them every single day. Every single day. So when you go to a jail right over here in this country, you are going to see what they call black and brown together right over there in a jail, because they abuse of these communities. Millions of people. This country, as you know, is the country that have more people in prison than anybody else around the nation, around the world. Around the world. It's just unbelievable. Absolutely.
So could be considered corruption?
Consider no. Is corruption. That's simple. That is the way how we describe is corruption, and that is the way how this system works. You give me the monies, I'm going to lobby against this, and I'm going to give monies to you if you give me that $2 billion contract. And that's exactly what this administration is doing.
Gustavo, what's going to happen with the future of the dreamers, the soñadores, because a new deadline is coming, and what could happen?
Well, I need to give you a little history about what is happening. Last week, a judge from here, from Washington, D.C., from the District of Columbia, made a very important decision, Jorge. The decision was DACA need to be fully implemented, an extraordinary decision. And I think that I hope if the state is going to be an extraordinary decision for 1 million people, right? So that is so many people who are going to benefit. However, it's a big but with capital letter, but what is happening is two. The judge at the same time say, and by the way, Trump administration, you have 20 days if you want to appeal. But not only that, tomorrow, Wednesday, August the 8th, in Texas, another judge that we know that is very anti-immigrant is calling also to make a decision about DACA. We expect that it's going to be a negative decision. So you see it's going to be two conflicts. It's going to be a conflict of two decisions, one positive and one negative. We don't know what is going to happen. What we are recommending to our families and to the dreamers is the following. If you still have DACA to renew, please do so if you are in a 1-year term to do it, because then you are going to have additional 2 more years. And the elections are coming in November.
And things will change.
Absolutely, and we believe that it can change. I truly believe that it's going to change, because this country is horrified for this administration in terms of their policies of family separation, corruption, and attacks to everybody. So that is the reason I believe that is going to be a big change in November.
And if you see two opposite positions, eventually they could go to the Supreme Court. And we go back to the idea that they're trying to sell in this country that there is a separate power, the judiciary, but then we know that there are 9 judges, and each of them with a very clear ideology, and now President Trump is making sure that the majority could be a right-wing philosophy. So in that case, most probably the result could be not positive for...
Very negative for our families. You describe very well what is happening in the Supreme Court. It's going to be historical changes, probably for 2 generations or so, that the ultra-right is going to control the Supreme Court in this country. And of course, that includes any immigration policy impacting our families and our communities. So we are very concerned about that. We are very, very concerned about what's going to happen. And that is the reason why we believe that it's important to register to vote. It's very important to make sure that you are go and vote in November elections, because November election can make a decision about who controls Congress. And remember, when you control Congress, you can pass legislation, you can hold accountable this administration, right? You can do a lot of things, so it's very important. And that is the reason why we invite our community to register to vote and to vote.
President Trump is threatening to shut down the government by the end of September if the Congress does not vote the resources to build his obsession, the wall in the border with Mexico. Tell me how the shutdown and how the, if you want, the chess play is playing with his idea of immigration reform and all this.
Yeah, Jorge, what is happening is that he knows that he's in trouble. He knows that the Republican Party is in trouble in November. So what he's trying to do is to motivate, energize his base. I call his cult. It's a group of people very committed. It's around 20% of the population in this nation who is very committed with this administration, racist and anti-immigrant. Very, very. So they're trying to mobilize. He particularly trying to mobilize his base, and including to shut down the government, including the message that to me is most important, to shut down the government, that to correct and fix immigration reform. So he knows that in that way he can mobilize his cult. I believe that is, from my viewpoint, is not going to work in this case. It's not going to work because we are going to go to general elections, and in general election, that cult is going to vote. But in addition to that, the independents and the Democrats are going to vote. And I think that is going to be an extraordinary victory for people who really want to see different changes in the nation. I believe that is going to be a very different result and outcome in November.
Turning the page, we're talking about Gustavo Torres, that has been at the head of CASA for 25 years, a quarter century. And I remember that we've met for many, many years ago. Your organization was in a small place, was called CASA de Maryland, not just CASA.
Right.
And I'm sure that you were already receiving a lot of awards, and one of them, one of the most influential people in the area of Maryland, among many. So you have seen in the last quarter century a lot of changes in the profile of the immigrants in the U.S. The ones who come in 1994 when you started are the ones of today. How you have seen that change?
Extraordinary changes, Jorge. I see still a lot of immigrants coming from Latin America, in particular from Central America, people who are very committed with his family, with their families, with their communities, people who just come because what we described before, right, the policies of this country and the situation in Central America. But in addition to that, I see so many people, immigrants coming from Africa. It's so beautiful to see this diversity that we have in our centers. We have now 10 different centers in different key states right now. And we see more people coming from Africa. And the relationship between Latinos and Africans, because we have the same roots and the same kind of experience of immigrants, right over there working together. So I see that. And that gives me a lot of hope and give me the opportunity to keep growing in this organization. We are in a very key stage. And the reason why our board of directors make a decision to be in the key states is because we recognize that if we don't change these policies in key states, we never are going to pass comprehensive immigration reform. Just let me put 2 examples, Pennsylvania and Virginia. We started already in Virginia to change the dynamic in Virginia. We are doing the same thing in Pennsylvania. That is the reason why my board made a decision to create another organization called CASA in Action to do the political work, to make sure that we are going to energize our community, make sure that we motivate our community, and the community go and vote. Before, people told me, Gustavo, and who is the candidate that I need to vote for? And I cannot say that, because as a non-profit organization, we have a specific regulation in this country that we cannot be endorsing anybody. But our sister organization, CASA in Action, can do it. And with the sister organization, we can tell you for whom you need to vote.
And what will be the recommendation?
Well, our recommendation in this particular case with CASA in Action is that you need to vote for people who are pro-immigrant, who are people who are Latinos or immigrants who are ready to vote for you and vote in November in the
So not necessarily Republicans?
No, absolutely no. We are very clear. I mean, if somebody is responsible for this crisis, and again, I'm speaking about CASA in Action right over here, somebody is responsible for this crisis is the Republican Party. And you know why? Because the Republican Party provides all the power necessarily and protection necessarily to this administration to create these cruel and inhumane policies against our community. So we have the responsibility as immigrants and Latinos to send a very strong message to this party and say it's totally unacceptable, enough is enough, we are going to remove you from power.
For 25 years, you were the head of CASA, and we were talking about the changes that you have seen in the immigrants who came to this country. But you were exposed to that experience. How, at the personal level, those experiences that you lived through the immigrants have changed the Gustavo Torres from 1994 to the Gustavo Torres model 2018?
More commitment, Jorge. That is the way how I say, more commitment with my community. When I see people who are fighting for better life, who are fighting to make sure that they are going to bring their families and their kids right over here, who have this extraordinary ethics of work, who are this extraordinary passion for being together as a family, it gives me more hope and more commitment to keep fighting for justice, for social justice, for dignity. That is, give me more energy to keep this fight that we have. And we know that this fight is going to take more time. We're learning from Martin Luther King that it's not going to take a day or two to win. We believe that we are going to win because history and justice is in our side.
No political ambitions in the future?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of political ambitions for our community.
But for
our members, not for me. No, for me, no. We have a political ambitions to make sure that our community is going to be represented right over there. The new leadership, we have the responsibility to support financially, politically, and with leadership, the new leaders that are coming from our society. And that is the role that CASA in Action is playing. And I believe that that is my role. I already have 25 years of experience to learning how this system works, and my responsibility is to transfer that experience to the new leaders.
Gustavo Torres, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and good to be with you, Jorge.